Michaela, hello.
Hello.
Hi. Um, could you please tell us more about what vamorolone exactly is and what it does?
Yeah. Vamorolone is what we call a dissociative steroid and is a new drug that is currently in development. And when we talk about dissociative steroid, means that is a drug that is similar to, is a corticosteroid, which is expecting to maintain the effect of corticosteroid, the same effect that we see on corticosteroid in Duchenne, but lose or minimize the side effects profile.
Okay, thank you very much. And about the clinical trial actually of vamorolone, can you tell me more about that? How is that?
Yes. So exactly. And so Revergent has developed Vision, let's say introducing VISION-DMD. VISION-DMD is the drug development program of Vamorolone for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So it's actually VISION-DMD include a few clinical trials to try to confirm that Vamorolone is safe to be administered in children with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and then is associated with benefit and similar benefits with that we see with corticosteroid. So far, different clinical trials have been performed with vamorolone. We initially performed what we call a phase 1 clinical trial, which means that it's been tested in healthy adult volunteers to ensure that it's safe to be administered in people. We have now conducted also what we call a phase 2A study, which when boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy were treated to receive different doses of vamorolone over a 6-month period of time to confirm that all the doses tested are safe and to try to understand whether there is a sign of efficacy. As the phase 2A confirmed that vamorolone is safe and seems to show a positive trend in terms of efficacy, which means that the boys that were treated with vamorolone show an improvement of muscle strength and function. We are now moving in what we call a phase 2B clinical trials. That is the one that is going to get started recruitment in US and in other countries, and is coming to open in different countries in the upcoming months. The phase 2B study is a study where we want to compare 2 doses of vamorolone, 2 milligrams and 6 milligrams, against placebo and against prednisone. What the study wants to show is that, to confirm, is that vamorolone is show an improvement of muscle strength and function in boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and is better than placebo in terms of improvement of muscle strength and function. But we also want to show that the vamorolone is safer than prednisone in boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So we want to show that they have less side effects. And the phase 2B study is a 1-year-long study, but the boys will be receiving vamorolone, placebo, or prednisone during the first 6 months. And in the last 6 months, all boys will continue to take vamorolone if well tolerated.
Okay, thank you very much. And what about the drug itself? Like, will my son receive vamorolone or a placebo?
So for the phase 2B study is what we call a randomized double-blind study, which means that boys who are recruited in the study will be randomly assigned to receive either placebo, prednisone, or vamorolone, the low dose of 2 milligrams per kilo, or vamorolone 6 milligrams. So let's say that a quarter of the boys will be receiving placebo for the first 6 months, a quarter will receive prednisone, and half of them will receive either of one of the 2 doses of vamorolone. This is only for the first 6 months, and after that, all boys will be receiving vamorolone and will not be a placebo group after 6 months.
Okay, and what about the risk? What happens if my son gets side effects?
Obviously, I think that we need to, first of all, describe, as I mentioned, for the first 6 months of the study, we will have boys can receive either vamorolone, prednisone, or placebo. Although the study is to better understand the side effects of vamorolone, we well know the side effects of prednisone, and therefore. But we also have to think that vamorolone is expected to have less side effects than corticosteroid, but it's something that the study is going to investigate. So the boys can still develop the most common side effects that we see with corticosteroid, which include weight gain, behavioral problem, and other side effects usually are not seen in the short period of time, so after in the first 6 months. So we know that corticosteroids are associated with also problem with the bone or problem with the growth, but obviously this will not be obvious in the first 6 months. So we also expect that vamorolone, boys treated with vamorolone will not have such side effects, and that is why we are testing this drug. However, if a boy shows side effects during the first 6 months, we will continue to monitor him during this period. And as I mentioned, after that, they all will go on vamorolone. And if we assume that vamorolone has less side effects, we would expect these side effects to slow down. At the same time, as for any clinical trial, if any parent or a boy has any concern about side effects, everybody is free to withdraw from the study. And we also have to think that, as for any other clinical trials, the safety and the best for the patient is the priority, and therefore it's possible that the clinician decided the best interest of the boy to discontinue the drug.
Okay, thank you very much. And could you tell me more about the benefits almost of the trial? Like, why should I go into this trial?
I think, first of all, I have to say, as a clinician, there is never a right or wrong answer about shall I take part in a clinical trial or not. And these really depend on the boy, on the situation of the family. But I think that what I found, I think, important for this clinical trial is that we know that at the moment, corticosteroids are the only drug that can be prescribed in all boys with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, regardless the mutation. And we also know that corticosteroids are associated with benefit, which means that they prolong the ability to walk, but also they prevent complications such as problem with the heart or problem with the breathing, and also complication in terms of curve of the spine or scoliosis. So I think that there are a lot of evidences about the efficacy of steroid in Duchenne. The problem with corticosteroid is they have several side effects, and the side effects of corticosteroid really limit our ability to prescribe corticosteroid in some cases, or can be very distressful for the boys or the young men when they grow, and for the family. If we think about side effects like weight gain, or the stopping in the growth, or the delay in the puberty, or the increased risk of fractures, are obviously side effects that are relevant for the clinician, but are relevant for the boy and their family. So the idea is to try to develop a corticosteroid that maintains efficacy, so it's still associated with the benefit, but has less or known side effects. And therefore, I think that would be important to help the development of such a drug. Obviously, this study is a placebo-controlled study, so the decision whether taking part in a clinical trial, in this clinical trial, is in the best interest of the boy will need to be made by the clinician who knows the boys, and obviously in discussion with the boy and the family.
Okay, thank you very much. So the clinical trial is open for all Duchenne boys, regarding of which mutation, and parents or clinicians or the boys can always decide to stop with the trial. Is that correct?
Exactly. So this trial is open to any boys with confirmed Duchenne muscular dystrophy, has to have an age between the age of 4 and 7, and does not have to have received corticosteroid before, but is not related to the mutation. And therefore, I think that the opportunity to take part in the study should be discussed with all families, with all boys and the families that fit this criteria.
Okay, thank you very much. And could you please explain some more about the implications of the clinical trial?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, is a clinical trial. First of all, probably I need to mention that the drug, so Vamorolone, is administered as a liquid solution that the boys will need to take every day as a orally in the morning. Because in the first part of the trial, and the taste of the drug is a orange taste, so far has been well tolerated by the boys that have been recruited in previous studies. Because the first part of the study also have the possibility, the placebo group and the prednisone group, for the first 6 months, the boys will also take a tablet that can be either placebo or prednisone to maintain the blind. So if a boy decides to take part in the study, they will need to take the study medication both as a liquid solution and tablets every morning at home with their breakfast. But as for any other clinical trials, there are investigations that need to be performed when the boys take part in a clinical trial. So as what we call, we have a screening period when usually it is performed in 2 visits, and is when we have all the assessment to ensure that the boy is eligible for the study and is safe for the boy to take part in the study. After this, and usually can require up to 2 days visit. After that, they will have a baseline assessment when they will have a final confirmation that they are eligible to take part in the study, and they will be formally enrolled in the study. During all this, after that, they will need to come on a regular basis to clinic in order to assess the both safety and efficacy of the drug. In terms of the assessment that are performed during the visit, the study has been really designed in accordance with the standard of care. So the assessment that the boys will require to do in clinic are all assessments that they should be overall familiar with, because are part of their assessment for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So they will be seen by a clinician who does a physical examination and check the height, the weight, the blood pressure, the heart. They will also have a physiotherapy assessment, which means that they will be asked to do a few tests such as the North Star assessment, or measuring the time that the boy required to get up from the floor, or the time that the boy required to climb a few steps or run 10 meters. As part of the study, we also have the 6 minutes walking test, which most of the boys are now for family have heard about, and is just asking the boy to walk up and down a corridor for 6 minutes to see how far he can walk, and can be a measure of endurance. There are other assessments which we measure how satisfied the family is with the treatment, and some questionnaires that are mainly completed from the parents on behalf of the child about, in general, how much is the impact on quality of life and on their daily activities. In some occasions, some visits, we will also perform some blood tests, and the blood tests are really performed in order to check that the drug is well tolerated by the boy, and to monitor some of the side effects that we usually see in patients treated with corticosteroid. We also have, as part of the trial, at some appointment, assessment of the heart function, so the ECG and the echocardiogram. We will also have a DEXA scan and the spinal X-ray to measure the effect of prednisone and Vamorolone on the bone and the risk of fractures. They will have eye examination. These are all tests that are usually done as part of clinical assessment. To give you an idea, in terms of the frequency of the appointment, the boys will need to come after the screening visit. They will need to come 2 weeks after having started the medication, and then approximately every 6 weeks thereafter. The duration of the appointment are quite long, especially when there are more assessments to be performed. So some visits will really be performed in 1.5 to 2 hours, when other visits might require the boys to stay in the hospital for almost all day. There is no overnight as part of the study, so the boys all the visits are done in 1 day, although some family might need to travel and therefore spend a night near to the hospital. And there are no what we call invasive procedures, so there is no muscle biopsy involved in this study.
That's very good to hear. So no muscle biopsy in this study. How does it further go? For example, does it stop me for accessing gene therapy for other trials?
This is a clinical trial, and therefore as we need to investigate the effect of Vamorolone, and it's not possible to participate at the same time in 2 different clinical trials. So if a boy is participating in the Vamorolone or VISION-DMD clinical trial, he will not be able to take part in any other clinical trial, including gene therapy. This is really because when we do a clinical trial, we want to investigate both the safety and efficacy of the drug. And if a boy starts to take part in different trials with different drugs, if we see a side effect, we will never know who is responsible of that side effect, which drug is responsible of the side effects. And the same is in terms, if we see an improvement, we will not know which drug is responsible of improvement. That is why it is essential in any clinical trial research that we test 1 drug at a time. At the same time, most of the clinical trials obviously has an exclusion criteria participation in other clinical trials. At the same time, the majority, although it's difficult to make a general comment because it depends really on study by study, but so far the majority of the study required boys to be not on an investigational drug for a certain period of time before recruitment. That can be 3 to 6 months. So there is always the possibility to discontinue 1 study and after a period of 3 to 6 months be recruited in another clinical trial. For that perspective, I think that is important also to make it clear at the same time that because Vamorolone replaces corticosteroids, once in order to be recruited in the majority of the clinical trial currently running, including gene therapy so far, although it might change in the future, they require the boys to be on stable corticosteroid treatment. So in that case, the boys will need to discontinue the Vamorolone study, be commenced with standard corticosteroid treatment, and be treated for at least 6 months before being recruited in another study.
Okay, so my boy cannot participate in 2 studies at the same time, but what about gene therapy after this study have ended? Is that still possible?
After the study is ending, the problem is if gene therapy is tested in a clinical trial, probably the clinical trial will require the boys to be on stable standard corticosteroid. That is how it is at the moment. There is conversation going on for which if Vamorolone is proven to be a good replacement of corticosteroid and will go for approval, once it's approved, it will not be seen as an investigational drug, and therefore they might be able to take part in gene therapy trial. It's different in the situation where a drug has been approved. So if Vamorolone is approved, it's not considered an investigational drug. If gene therapy is approved, it's not considered an investigational drug. And therefore, boys can take more than 1 medication at the same time. I'm not sure I made it clear this time.
No, but what you can say is that it's just not sure whether you can access gene therapy after Vamorolone because we're not really sure whether the drug is approved as a steroid-like drug, yes or not. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is clear to me. Okay. I want to move on about the way to inform us about the clinical trial? Because I've heard there was an app to inform your child about it. Is that also applicable for Vamorolone?
Yes, so we had a long discussion about the recruitment of young children in clinical trials. And obviously is important for any patient, adult or child taking part in a clinical trial, that they understand what is the study is about and what are the implications. But we found that the traditional way to inform children about clinical trials is not very effective, because we usually is just a what we call a patient information sheet. So is a text that might be facilitated by pictures, but we found that it's very difficult for a young child, we are talking about children 5 to 6 years old, to maintain the concentration when reading a relatively boring message. So as part of the VISION-DMD program, we have developed an app, and which means that we try to use a more interactive way. It's an app that can be downloaded or look at in any notebook, and is a more interactive way to inform the child about what Vamorolone is and what the Vamorolone clinical trial is. Is explained in a more visual way the assessment that the child will be asked to and what are the implications. I think that this is a component that the VISION-DMD is more than just the clinical trials. Is not simply the clinical trial related to the development of Vamorolone, but is really try to improve the delivery of clinical trials in children with Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Okay. I was having some questions about the format of the drug, because you were saying that it comes with a lovely orange taste, but can you elaborate more about that?
Yeah, so Vamorolone is presented as a liquid solution that can be taken orally and is administered using a syringe. And it's important that, as per corticosteroid, it's important that the drug is taken on a full stomach. So what we recommend is to take the medication in the morning with breakfast, and we ask the boy to drink a full glass of full fat milk with the liquid solution. They use this syringe. They need to clean the syringe so to ensure that all the content in the syringe has been emptied, and then to drink a glass of milk to ensure that the drug is taken with an appropriate amount of fat, which ensure that the drug is properly absorbed. For the first 6 months, I also mentioned that the boys will need to take a tablet that can be either prednisone or placebo. And the tablet is the smallest tablet that could be available, has been already tested in another clinical trial with young children with Duchenne, and was overall well tolerated. The problem with the tablet is that it cannot be crushed, so need to be taken a full tablet. And we have a few recommendations in the protocol about how to help young children to swallow tablets, which include the possibility to put the tablet in yogurt or in applesauce or something that facilitates them for swallowing.
Okay, thank you. And you've earlier mentioned that there will be no muscle biopsy for this study. Is there another invasive procedure that's going on?
No, there is no muscle biopsy and no invasive procedure. So there is no, for example, requirement of general anesthesia for any of the investigation. The only procedures that we'll have that can be considered invasive at the same time are regular blood tests. So the boys, that is for safety reasons, so we will need to collect blood tests regularly. We have advised sites to use the EMLA cream, so an anesthetic cream, to try to reduce the discomfort. They will also have a particular test called ACTH stimulation test, which means that we know that corticosteroid can cause what we call adrenal suppression, which means that is the inability for the body to produce their own steroid. And the best way to measure this is with the ACTH stimulation test. That with the test, which means that the boy will need to be have a cannula inserted in the arm instead of a needle. And the cannula is a tiny little straw that is kept in the vein and allowed to take blood, but also administered drug, and in that case, it is ACTH. So they will have the cannula put in situ, and then we'll have some blood taken. The ACTH will be administered, and some blood tests will be taken again after 30 and 60 minutes. And these tests will be repeated at screening and then at 6 months and 12 months appointment. These are the only two invasive procedures that are part of the study.
Okay, thank you very much. And you were just already talking about the 2B study. What is exactly the goal of the 2B study, and what happens afterwards? What is a bit like the timeline of Vamorolone? Can you give a perspective on that?
Yeah, so the phase 2B study, as I mentioned, is really the aim is to demonstrate whether Vamorolone is better than placebo in terms of improving muscle strength and function, which means that what we want to see is that when that are treated has a improvement or a stabilization of the muscle strength and function, which is not seen in the boys that are treated with placebo. And the boy treated on placebo will have the deterioration of the muscle strength and function that we expect in Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And the second aim of the phase 2B study is showing that Vamorolone is better than prednisone in terms of side effects. And in particular, what we want to monitor is to show is that Vamorolone is better than prednisone in terms of weight gain, so cause less weight gain compared to prednisone. And there are other safety aspects that we check, is that we want to show that Vamorolone is better than prednisone in terms of have less risk of developing glucose intolerance or diabetes, less risk to develop bone problem, and therefore the risk of fractures, and has less problem in terms of what I mentioned before, that was the adrenal suppression, so the ability of the body to react to stress, that are the major concern with prednisone. The study has started recruited in US in August this year, and there are now more and more boys that are screened and recruited, and the full study lasts 1 year. So we would expect to complete the recruitment of 120 patients in 1 year time, so in 18 months from the beginning of, which was August 2018, and then have the study completed a year after that. There is a very good team effort in terms of having then the study results analyzed and published as soon as possible after the last patient, the last visit. There is already, only when we have probably the result of the study, we can think about submission for regulatory approval, although the discussion with the regulator is already ongoing based on the result of the phase 2A. There is also the intention to already move forward, potentially by the end of next year, with study which will add some information about the use of Vamorolone in different age group, and in particular in the younger children and in the older one. So the idea is that once we have the confirmation that Vamorolone is safe and is working, we want to already work on expanding the availability of Vamorolone to younger and older patients.
Okay, thank you very much. You were just talking about that every boy with Duchenne muscular dystrophy can join the 2B study, regardless of which mutation. Are there any more inclusion or exclusion criteria for this study?
Yes, so the study is open to boys which have a confirmed diagnosis of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which means that they need to have a genetic confirmation of Duchenne muscular dystrophy or a total absence of dystrophin of muscle biopsy. They have to be between the age of 4 and less than 7 at the time of enrollment, so until before the age of 7 at the time of the enrollment, and they have to have at least 4 years of age. They have to be able to walk independently, and they have to be able to get up from the floor in less than 10 seconds. And the reason of this is because we want to be sure that they maintain the ability to get up from the floor independently for the full duration of the study. These are the main inclusion criteria. They also have, there are other exclusion criteria. That means that boys who have previously received corticosteroid will not be eligible for the study. Also, there are some medications that are prohibited. So if a boy is treated, for example, with spironolactone or eplerenone within 4 weeks prior the first dose of the study drug, will not be eligible. And also treatment with other medication such as herbal remedies, coenzyme Q10, creatine within 4 weeks prior to the recruitment make the boys not be eligible. Also, boys who has received or are receiving or have received in the past medications such as Translarna or eteplirsen will not be eligible unless they have discontinued this medication at least 3 months before enrollment. There are other inclusion-exclusion criteria which are available through the VISION-DMD website. The full list is available on the VISION-DMD website. I just summarized probably the most relevant one.
Okay, thank you very much. I got one final question for you before we move on to Andrea Smith, talking more about the clinical trial itself and the practicalities. What will happen if I have 2 sons who want to participate? Do they get randomly assigned, or will they be assigned to the same kind of treatment?
This is something that we are currently discussing. At the moment, they will be randomly assigned to any treatment, but obviously this will only apply for the first 6 months, and after 6 months they will all be on Vamorolone. But it's something that we are in discussion with the sponsor.
Okay, thank you very much, Michela, for your explanation. I'd like to hand it over to Andrea Smith. She's the clinical trials manager. Welcome, Andrea. Could you please give us more information about the countries of the trial that is starting?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Suzia-Ann, for the introduction. I think on the next slide, there'll be a list of countries. Yep. So these are the list of countries and cities where the trial is planned. So UK, Sweden, Netherlands, Belgium, Czech Republic, Israel, Australia, the United States, and Canada. And we have varying number of sites within each country, from 1 up to 9, I believe, in the United States.
And what about the new sites that are opening? What are the criteria that they have to meet for the new sites?
For sites to be considered for this trial, they would have to have a eligible patient population where they thought they could recruit at least 4 patients into the trial. They would have to have the ability to complete all of the outcome measures, which Michela discussed earlier. Obviously, they would have to have regulatory approval in the country which they're conducting the trial, and they would have to have ethical approval as well.
Okay. And what if I want to participate in those trials, but I don't live in one of these countries?
So the sponsor is very dedicated to ensuring that patients interested in the trial are connected with a site, even if it's in a different country. So we've done our best and will continue to do our best to connect families that are interested in the trial with the closest site to them, even if it may be in another country. There are some circumstances that may differ by site or by country that could restrict them accepting patients from other countries, but we are more than happy to help connect families with the closest site to them.
That's very considerate. Thank you very much. What about the cost that are covered then? For example, travel expenses or staying. Could you tell me more about that?
Sure. So again, this differs a little bit site by site. However, again, the sponsor, Reverigen, is very dedicated to making sure that at least all of the basic costs related to participation in the trial for the family are covered. So typically things like airfare, hotel nights, if needed, would be covered by the trial, as well as some incidental costs such as parking and that sort of thing as well.
Okay. And what are other practicalities in joining the trials that we did not discuss so far? For example, how do I apply?
Sure. So I think Michela did a really great job of discussing what it would be like to participate in the trial, including the number of visits and the different outcome measures that would need to be done. So I think she did a job reviewing that. How to apply, if you go to the next slide, there's some contact information. So there's more information available on the VISION-DMD website, also on the clinicaltrials.gov website, and you'll have to plug in that identifier number. On that website, you'll see the full list of inclusion-exclusion criteria, as well as a list of participating sites. The sites that are listed on the website currently are those that have a fully executed contract for the study, so it's not a complete list, so just keep that in mind when you're looking at the list there. But for sites that are listed, there will be a contact information for each site. So if you look at that list and you see a site that is near you, you are welcome to reach out to that contact person listed on the website. If you don't live near one of those trial sites, or you would like to discuss options of what site might be best for you, you're welcome to contact myself, and my contact information is on the screen there, asmith@TRiNDS.com, and I'm happy to try to get you connected with the closest site.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. For the entity that checks those new sites for Vamorolone, who does it? Who checks those new sites for Vamorolone? Who's the authority behind that?
So there would be different layers of that process. So there's the regulatory authority that's specific to that country that would be responsible for reviewing the protocol and giving the go-ahead for the site to enroll in the study. There's also the ethical committee at the site or in the country that would review the protocol for ethical considerations, review the consent forms, and ensure that the study can move forward from an ethical perspective. And then I guess there could be internal layers also within the hospital itself that would be reviewing the protocol and ensuring that it's practical and safe for patients to enroll in the trial.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see...
Not particularly. I just maybe make the point that, as I mentioned, one point is that VISION-DMD is really was developed in a collaboration between the pharmaceutical companies, so Reverigen, and academia, and has been developed with what we call a venture philanthropy model, receiving funding from different from patient organization and from institution and government, including the European Commission with the Horizon 2020 grant. And the idea is really to try to develop a drug in collaboration with the with the patient and a drug that is affordable.
Thank you. Can you tell me more about venture philanthropy? How does that work?
Yes, I can just introduce, I think that it's becoming quite clear in the muscle field and in Duchenne muscular dystrophy that one of the issues that really the drugs that are currently in development are really costly, and there is an issue about how affordable will be in the long term. But one of the problems, and it's not obviously the only one, but one of the problems of high cost drug is that developing a drug in terms of testing the drug from the animals to the patient to the safety and then the efficacy take a long time, but it's also very expensive. And in a way, the company always then claim the money that they have already invested back as part of the cost of the drug. So the idea behind the development of Vamorolone is to really try to develop a different model to develop drugs for rare diseases, which is what we said, venture philanthropy. So there is no capital involved, and the funding are gained for the development of the drug until the phase 2 study are mainly based on patient organization, charity, and government funding on grant application in order to, in a way, guarantee, I think, two components. One, to develop a drug that is then affordable, so to try to keep the investment in the drug development lower, but also to engage the community in the development of the drug from the beginning. And the community means that both the patients that are funding the study and are then the beneficiary of the drug, but also early discussion with the regulators in order to find the support from the government to develop the drug, but also then how the approval system will be, and being, in a way, working together throughout the development of the drug with the different parties involved.